Welcome to the Jets UK podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew Groves, and joined by some of my co-hosts, Matthew Merrett and Craig Edmunds. Guys, how are we doing today?
All good, thank you. All good. I mean, it was a roller coaster first night of the NFL draft. It was kind of wacky, wild, not just for the Jets, but across the board. There were some big moves made. I think.
Yeah,
it's one of those things you kind of had to be there. I couldn't keep up. That run from 10 to 18, I was all over the shop. I could not keep up.
It was absolute madness. Craig, looking back on it and looking at the positions that the Jets got, once you woke up in the morning, like, most sensible people, what's your feelings about how they came out last night?
So, funnily enough, I've had a pretty interesting morning. I'm fighting next weekend, so I wasn't able to stay up because I was training first thing this morning. So I got up a bit early, and knowing we'd record, I thought I need to get in the first 10 picks. And after the first 10 picks, I'll be honest, I was flipping furious. I was gutted, but I then, because I wasn't even going to do any more. I knew we'd talk about it, but I don't mind the draft, especially first night. So I wanted to watch it in its entirety. But
of course, yeah.
After having been suitably disappointed initially, a little bit of Twitter told me that we had arguably the best Jets night.
Ever.
When last has there been a better draft?
I mean, I said it.
static.
I tweeted out. Yeah, absolutely. I tweeted out. I said, in the 20 years I've followed the team, I haven't followed a draft. I haven't seen a draft like this before, like in terms of the whole, obviously the potential. Obviously, we look back and we say, that Revis draft, and we look at Mangold and Brick. But in terms of like the potential of the players being picked going forward, I don't remember a night where you've got three guys who are, clearly in the top 10 of a lot of people's boards. So I think it was absolutely fantastic, and the ride that we went along was something else. So, it's just going to today's going to be a quick little show, just to get you ready for rounds 2 and 3, and kind of recapping round 1. We're just going to kind of go through the picks and our thoughts on them, and maybe look forward to what's going to happen in day 2. So, Matt, we kick off with Trayvon Walker going first, which is what we needed to happen at first, right? For the Jags, we're like, yes, thank you, Jaguars. And then Hutchinson went, 2. It was like, great, fantastic. That's kind of chalk so far. And we heard a lot that the Stingley was maybe the guy for the Texans at 3. We're like, okay, cool, great. So then KT's there at 4. We really, really wanted KT. And then the other people who we were kind of said to be in for was Sauce Gardner, who I personally was pretty okay with at that time, but I wanted pass rusher, and you were okay with Ekwonu, Matt. But like you were, we all wanted pass rusher, but they went with Sauce Gardner. What was your feelings when they went Sauce Gardner at 4?
I think it was such an interesting spot. I don't think any of us would have called that they'd have Ekwonu, KT, and Sauce all on the board of that 4th pick, and it was kind of, we were all kind of going into it, and the talk leading up to the draft was the Jets were going to kind of take whoever was left, or kind of play their board and take the best player available. And I think those 3 players, the KT one's interesting, obviously, because the fans loved him, and we loved him on this podcast, and we wanted him. We thought he could be that kind of dominant edge rusher we've had for so long. But the closer we got, the less and less likely it felt. And Sauce kind of started feeling more and more likely. So for me, I said it on the preview pod, I wouldn't have gone defensive back at 4, but I think you got to give credit to Salah and Joe Douglas. This is a defensive head coach, a guy with a plan, and they identified their guy. They knew what they wanted for the system, their scheme. I think Sauce has kind of like a load of the abilities that Salah looks for in a cornerback. He's long, he's rangy, he can sit back and play that kind of zone, but he can come up and press when he needs to. Yeah. So I think it's a nice pick. I think the question for Sauce isn't going to be answered tonight, and through no fault of his own, for the next 5 years, he's going to be linked to KT playing in the same stadium as him. And it's one of those Jets things, we've seen it before. We saw it with the Sam Darnold and Josh Allen discussion in 2018, where we got there first, but their careers have kind of been linked ever since because being drafted into the same division. So
yeah, I
think Joe Douglas had a plan. He executed it at 4, and throughout the rest of the night, I think Salah will be happy. I think Sauce is a great prospect. I think, as always with draft nights, the instant reaction is good, it's positive, but the questions are still going to be answered over the next couple of years. But I think for a first step, I think the Jets could be pretty happy with that first pick.
Yeah, he's going to have some decent receivers in the division alone to deal with in his first season. So we'll see how he matches up as a rookie. Craig, so just in just this pick alone, what was your feelings when you get to that point and they turn in the card and it's Sauce Gardner and not one of the pass rushers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that out of all of us, I think I was probably most comfortable with taking a defensive back at 4. And the reason for that is I guess, really briefly for me, I think, when we last recorded, or when I last recorded, I said that I thought the draft type was times 10 this time. And if you look at the boards then, in comparison to the boards this week, it's all changed, right? And that was kind of what I was alluding to. I think the difficulty I had, and the reason that I'm really comfortable, really happy with that pick, is there was so much, there was no consensus around the pass rushers. There was no, no one could say this is the next Nick Bosa. You know what I'm saying? No, there wasn't that guy. So I thought that for me, and the big thing with the draft, if you can't lay your hat on whether it be scheme or understanding, production, which Sauce has got all of those things. But if you can't lay your hat on it, for me, out of the draft, you get the most athletic guy. Like, I just think for any of their scheme understanding, the most athletic guy with good coaching, he'll pick it up. You can't replicate height. You can't replicate speed. So Sauce is a super athlete. And I think he absolutely helps our defense. He can play that man coverage, which we haven't seen a lot of in Salah's defense. But actually, I think that gives us great options, right? We've got a great defensive backfield anyway. So honestly, I cannot tell you this. I love this pick. I think it makes us a better football team as a result. And I think the biggest issue is less about comparing him to what a KT would have been. But I actually think the issue is going to be Revis 2.0. This guy's coming out with a big shoes to fill. I've just said, I expect him to, day one, go and be able to lock up the number one receiver on the other team. That's a big ask for a day one rookie. So yeah. I think that's going to be the issue. He has to perform, and he has to perform from day one.
Yeah, he's the biggest kind of cornerback guy that we've had since Revis, has been around, and so there's going to be a lot of expectations in terms of to replicate something similar to what he did at the college ranks. I mean, when that pick comes in, I was very high on Sauce as well. I loved him, but I just was so locked in on, like, if Thibodeau's there, you take him. That's it, and he was there. So when it was Sauce, I was like, okay, well, I trust the coaches that they really want. He's the guy that they wanted. Maybe they think they're Johnson at 10 or later on. We'll see. But there was still part of me that I was explaining to friends. I was like, yeah, I really like the player, but there's now, especially when KT went to 5 to the Giants, you're like, to have him there as a Giant player, and you've just passed on him, the player that you wanted. It felt like bittersweet, it kind of mixed emotions. So, I think from the player, he's going to be able to play both, zone and man. When they call for it, obviously they call for a lot of man in those kind of third and fourth down situations, and he's going to be able to do a really good job of making it difficult for the other team to kind of complete those downs that are really important. So that's the hope, at least. And like I said, he's going to have quite a few tests at it in his first year, as everyone is going crazy with weapons and filling out the teams with weapons. So we move on to any last thoughts on the Sauce Gardner pick before we move on to the next one, Matt? Anything?
Just I think that the nice thing, just building on what you guys said in terms of JD and like looking for those measurables, like Sauce Gardner, 96th percentile height, 95th percentile wingspan, 97th percentile arm length. He is he is tailor-made for that kind of long-rangey cornerback that Salah likes, and I think that is probably what kind of...
Exactly. You said Revis, Craig, but it's like Cromartie, right? Like from a physical standpoint, it's closer to Cromartie. And so, to have that guy, you're right, Matt, with those measurables, it's he's clearly a guy they were very excited about. You saw how their interactions on the phone with him. They were like,
Swaggy Sauce Gardner.
Swaggy Sauce Gardner.
Exactly. That counts for something. In New York, that counts for something.
It does. And I think it's going to be, I think there's a swag there, and I think they're really excited about the player. And it just makes you buy into it. If you feel confidence in this coaching staff and this front office and the guys they pick, then you go, and he's a good player. It's not like they pick some random reach, and you got to trust them. He was ranked number one for a lot of people as the number one cornerback. So you can't complain about too much, and especially with how things worked out. I think it worked out. It feels a lot better looking at the whole picture. But yeah, in the vacuum, that's where we're going. So then we move on to the 10th pick, and I'm thinking, okay, well, we maybe go receiver. We trade back for receiver. If Johnson's there, we go for him at 10. Just let's hope he's there till 10. We're kind of waiting. I think, Seattle are going to take. Seattle definitely going to take him. They went Charles Cross. I was like, he's there now, and I'm like, okay, it's like great. He's there now. What we're going to do? Receiver Garrett Wilson again. Another great pick. Love the pick, but still have that kind of moment of going. Love the player, but we didn't get the edge rusher. And I'm like, it's kind of a mix of emotions because, again, number one receiver, or for me, it was like there was very close between the two. I could speak about a different player or in that receiver group, but I'm very happy with Wilson. I know, Matt, he was your number one receiver easily, and same for David. So, really happy about the player. Bit frustrated about the pass rush at that point. But what was your thoughts, Craig, at the player and the kind of pick generally, and then obviously your thoughts as it came in?
So controversially, at this point, I was devastated. I'll be honest. He was not my number one receiver, right. And a lot goes down to what I was saying about Ahmad, right? In that, I think that we talked a bit about Andreas beforehand in terms of I think it's really hard for receivers to transition to the pro game. And I likened, we reflected on Jerry Jeudy, who's, for me, the most pro-ready receiver we've seen out of college in a while. And it still has taken him 2-3 years to get up to speed. And for me, when we're talking receiver, I think we desperately need a clear number one receiver. That's what I wanted. So I haven't watched, I can't say, you guys have been far, far more in depth in the draft. So I haven't watched that level of college to comment. But from what I've seen, playmaker, I love that. I love a true baller. But the measurables are concerning. And I think that, what's he, a shade over 5'11". Those bits they're worrying. And I want us to have a big body receiver. I'm not sold on Corey Davis at all. And that, for me, out of this whole process, especially considering there was, one of the top rushers still on the board. At this point, I'm heartbroken. And bear in mind, I'm not watching anymore. So I'm about to go to work.
Yeah, you're saying, that's it.
This point,
I'll watch the rest of it later. And I'm livid. And I was like, hold on, there's something not right here. And I texted you, I said, they did do more business by the end of the day. I didn't want to spoil it, but I said, there was more business done. Just like, whatever way you want to do, look at the rest of the draft and get yourself filled in because, like I said, the story's not over. But I do agree with you on that point where, there is a kind of, for me, I did like the player, but I even had this kind of feeling about, okay, like it, I'm not going to complain, but I'm not really sure where we're going with pass rusher. That's a mystery, and we've got a long way till 35. Matt, I know you love the player. Explain to me why, and explain to people, now that he's a Jet, why you love him so much, and gush about him a bit, and then your emotions about generally that pick and not going with Johnson and kind of thinking about where we are after pick 10.
Yeah, man, I was buzzing with this pick. I can't lie. I'm coming at it. I'm the opposite end of the spectrum because I've still got a bit of faith in Corey Davis as that kind of contested catch guy. I haven't sold my stocks there yet. I understand that he's a similar mold to Elijah Moore, perhaps a bit more vertical in the way that he can go up and get the ball, whereas Elijah likes to find those soft spots in the defense. Garrett's got that bit more physicality about him. it doesn't make us the biggest wide receiver room. There's no denying that, but it makes us one of the best at separating in the NFL. This route running is crisp. His first 3 steps on his routes are sharp. They're crisp. He knows what to do with his hands, and he can kind of make that sharp cut, that top of the route bend, that kind of where he needs to get to, find the ball and kind of get his stance. He uses his hands really well, and I think the most surprising thing about him was when he tested at the combine, his speed was much faster than I think people gave him credit for.
4.3, right? It was a 4.38. Yeah,
4.38, which is right up there, 90th percentile kind of 40-yard dash time for wide receiver. So this is someone who can move with the best of them, and he's gonna be a weapon. I think from a fair point of view, you've now got wide receivers who you can move around and kind of do different things with. You're not locked into playing 2 guys on the outside, 1 guy in a slot. I think you've got 3 guys in Corey Davis who you can use as a big slot, and I think I'd like to see him used there a little bit more next season. You've got Elijah Moore who can come inside and play outside. You've got Garrett Wilson who can do both of those things. And you pair that up with like a Michael Carter in the backfield, a CJ and a Conklin and tight end. You've got weapons. This is the most weapons we've had since like 2015 maybe. Eric Decker, Brandon Marshall. But I think you've got even more than that in the passing game. And
you've got the depth, right? If you're thinking Braxton as well, and the tight ends.
But I think all of that stuff puts so much pressure on Zach. Like from a scheme perspective, what you're saying, I agree, but that requires the quarterback to be on time. That requires the O-line to be functioning. These are all things that are going to develop, and I just wanted a 6'3" guy who can just run straight and jump and catch the ball and make it simple for him. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be some intermediate routes, which I do think that the tight end moves were good ones, and that should offer some level of safety for Zach. But these shifty, great route running, intermediate, yak guys. I love them, and I think Elijah Moore's brilliant. I think he's going to be a top receiver, but it does require Zach to be firing, and I think that puts a lot of pressure on him.
Well, I mean that's what they ask of him, and I think that's what they ask for the offense to be running at the height of its powers. That's really
it's a timing-based offense, isn't
it?
It's based on timing and that rhythm. So they need to get Garrett out there, get those reps in ASAP, because the more reps that they get, that timing is going to get better. I think you can go either way on the big physical guy or the separation guy. I think for the Jets and what the flow likes to, I think separation is kind of.
And if you've got multiple guys, if you've got multiple of those guys, then you'd hope that one of them is going to get open quickly. And if Zach can process fast enough, which by the end of the season he was looking much better at doing that, kind of working through the numbers of his progression. I think that if one of them's going to get free, if you've got Braxton do his little thing when he comes in, and you've got Elijah, and you've got Corey, and you've got Garrett. There's just a lot of people who are going to get open quick enough, and it's going to allow us to get the ball quickly to them. I think it does. You're right. It does put more pressure on Zach, but I think this is what they're looking at the player. They know what he can do from the first year they've had, and now that he's in his second year. I think that they're putting that on him, and I think that's going to really. They're not giving him a crutch, right? And I think the thing is, were you thinking, obviously, because London was gone by 8, so you're thinking Jameson Williams? Is that the way you're thinking, Craig?
Yeah,
Exactly. And with Jameson Williams, I mean, I love Jameson Williams. I think the only factor is, in terms of when you factor it in, is possibly just the injury factor was a factor. Even though he's looking like he's in really good progression to getting back, there's going to be that delay. It's naturally that he's not going to be fully back, And I think they wanted to have everything ready to roll, from OTAs through to training camp. Everything, even between the two, Garrett can go out now to train with Zach in between. Like, all this can happen now where Jameson Williams, the Lions took him, which I think was great, and they've got a little bit less pressure on them, their front office, when Joe Douglas, I think, needs to win now. And we've heard it, multiple people in the Jets community, I think, have kind of realised that with Jameson Williams as the potential. That's like the only thing that you would take away from him not being a perfect fit for the Jets. So, yeah. So
listen, given the business we've done, I'm all for it. Given the business we've done.
Yeah.
And you know what else I like? Just I do think that, for off the field production, right? For having looking like a football team, looking like somebody who knows what they want and is organised and was prepared for this draft, I can't fault it. Even if I disagree, I can't fault it at all.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing, isn't it? The JD had a plan and he executed that plan. So you got to give credit for that. Like some drafts in the past, it's kind of felt like it's been a bit scrambled or a bit rushed.
It's like they turned up and decided on the day sometimes.
Exactly.
yeah, exactly.
Joe has a
seems-
plan. Salah
it's-
has a plan. They're in
yeah.
lockstep. They know what they're doing, and like they're executing it. And that's the vision. And I think that's all you can really ask for. And then you judge that vision, but you can't fault the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the process is great. Like you see the process working out. It doesn't always work out, but I have said this, and we've said this on the draft, and I think Andrew said it when he was on the podcast last time. You know, it's like you trust the guys running the business, and you know that I think the process in all of the drafts, even the one with Gase, was like, you know, you take the tackle with Becton. I loved Mims, you know, when he came in. Some of these guys haven't worked out. That happens. That's the draft. But the process and the guys that they went through to try and get the players we liked at the time. There wasn't a lot of head scratches, especially in the important rounds. It wasn't like something that was reaching or we didn't need that position. So I think they really nailed it with the first two picks in terms of the players they brought in. Then obviously the question mark was, where's the edge, right? And so we're going through the draft, we get into the teens, and you know we're getting into the 20s, and Jermaine Johnson's still there. You're going, okay, and we're texting on the chat. We're like, all right, now you got to go up, you got to go up, and I'm going crazy.
I think we started texting at like 14, didn't we?
I think so. I think once he went past Baltimore, once Baltimore went with Carl Hamilton, and the funny thing is that they said in the post draft press conference that from pick 15 they went to every single team to try and get a trade and wasn't able to get a trade on every single. They couldn't find it. They couldn't make it work, but they were trying from pick 15, which indicates once he was past Baltimore, they're like, right, let's go for this guy. And they kept on going, and we've seen a video online of Joe finally getting on the clock at 26. Can you imagine trying to get back on the clock, desperate to get back and to get back and get JJ, and you're trying to get in, and you have to wait 11 picks. 11 picks. That's like
that's nuts.
That's a third of the draft, and he's still there somehow. Multiple times, I couldn't believe it.
So why do we think that is? Sorry, I don't want to hide. I know about
no,
why do we think he's dropped so much?
I just think that was, I think it was a positional. I think it was the kind of the positional needs for certain teams. I think also maybe the fact of him being 23 years old, him being a guy who was a kind of 1 year kind of wonder after having kind of a little bit of a rocky, kind of a journey. But that's the thing, they loved him. He was, they've said that they got 3 top 8 players on their board. So he was, let's say if he was that eighth guy, he may not even be there. He might have been that might have been Garrett, right? We just don't know. But they loved him, and he loved the journey, and he actually embraces the journey he's been on. I mean, he's 23. Yeah, he's a little bit older, but he's not actually, if he works out to have an 8-year career with multiple, we're not going to care about it. That he was 23 rather than 22 or 21. And I think, but that did scare off some teams when you're looking at potentially. I think they just looked elsewhere. There was no other pass rusher taken in that time, right? Like it was basically Katie was gone. Then you get past, and then who do we have left? Was there another pass rusher? Am I?
Carl Loftus went 30.
Yeah, Carl Loftus went after him. So there wasn't another pass rusher between the two. No one went pass rusher, right? So they just went with other positions, and then that was it. And they got a trade with the Titans. They got in, and I knew it was going to be him. We're like because we heard so much about him, and yeah, he was a top 8 guy for them, and incredible. And listening to his video when he was interviewed by the Jets media team, I was just blown away by the guy. I thought he was such a charismatic, so happy to be a Jet. Like he was so happy, like they came up, they got him. That he was so happy that his dad's from Brooklyn. Like he's just so elated to be a Jet, and you just love to see guys who are just so you can just read like the how it's not just being drafted. They're being drafted. They're happy to go wherever, right? But you could tell there was something about being a Jet. Like I said, it was his favorite visit. He loved coming. He really wanted to come here, and so the fact that they came up and get him, he wasn't just the guy that was just the best on their board. It meant a lot to him, and I am so fired up. So Matt, when JJ is, what's your idea? What's your thoughts on that journey, and what's your thoughts on JJ the player?
Well, my favourite moment from JJ of night one was before the draft when they have the prospects out of stage. They did their moment of silence for Ukraine, which is all good, and they did the camera run, and 19 of the prospects are looking well serious, and the camera gets to JJ and him in his yellow jacket. He is feeling himself in this moment for silence for Ukraine,
and those shades as well. Those
the
kind
shades,
of,
and he's like he's got the gun fingers out, and he's making moves on camera during this silence for Ukraine, which cracked me up because my guy was feeling himself, and I loved it with the yellow suit coming dressed to impress. The draft for him, man, it was tough, and like we'd heard that he could go as high as 4. Which was interesting, and I think there was obvious love for him in the building from the Jets, even if that wasn't kind of reciprocated around the league. And I think that kind of run after Baltimore from 14 to 25, I think if you go through the teams, not many of them had edge rushers their top needs, which I think might explain why he was able to kind of slip to us. I think they all had bigger priorities, which definitely worked in our favour. I mean, I think it's a home run pick for the Jets. I think at 26. You're getting someone who week one is going to come in and kind of dominate in that front four and kind of be able to set that edge against the run. He's able to kind of use his hands really well, but his rare passing attacks is already so wide. And I think he's kind of, it's always the trade-off when you're talking about a prospect who's 23, because they perhaps have less room to grow than somebody who's 20. But the flip side and the balance of that is he's had that kind of experience at lower levels, and he's worked his way up through JUCO and Georgia and FSU, and he's put these moves into practice in real life scenarios, and he hasn't just been there going against pads. He's done it against other guys, and he's won, and he's kind of got better each and every year, and that's kind of impressive in itself. And you kind of hope that will translate, and he'll be able to kind of keep building on it in the same way that when he took the step up from JUCO, he built on it. When he went to Florida and was used in the right way, because the Georgia thing's interesting because he was underutilized at Georgia, and like they didn't use him properly, which is why he went to FSU, and which is why he kind of got into that wide 9 position. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I think with kind of JFM, Lawson, Huff, you've got a nice rotation there. You can play loads of those guys at 5 or wide 9. Yeah. And I think the last thing I'd say on Jermaine, and this is kind of like going back to what Joe Douglas looks like. We've said it for all of these prospects in terms of the physical stuff. I use this site called Mock Draftable, and it kind of creates the spider diagrams on how good they've done. And Jermaine Johnson is like 93 percentile 40-yard dash, 97 percentile 10-yard split, 92 broad jump. And when they map out these spider diagrams, they kind of give you comparisons based on how percentagely close you are to other prospects, just for things. And most kind of other prospects have like comparisons which are like 90 plus. Yeah. The nearest guy to Jermaine Johnson's stats is only getting 85%, that is a unique athlete you're getting there at 26. That is someone who is unique, different, and that is going to be exciting to watch. And I think it's an exciting pick, and we just keep everything crossed. We finally get that edge rusher we haven't had in ages.
Well, maybe with 2 of them, right? Maybe we find it, because we thought we were going to get it with Carl Lawson as a free agent, because he was looking ferocious. We never got to have that last year. With the curse continued. Maybe it's London buses, right? They don't come up. They do two turn up at the same time, and that would be absolutely incredible, Craig. So once you were informed that there was more business being done by the Jets later on, and you saw that it was JJ at 26, what's your feelings getting that pass rusher there and the value there?
Christmas, mate. Absolutely. Like, could not believe when you said that. Honestly, no, sorry. When I watched, my world was crushed. I was like, "How have we messed it?" Obviously, typical Jets fan. How have we messed this up? Like before the draft, my point was there is no way we miss. Like this is set up perfectly for us. Whether it be between the draft and free agency, we're gonna have a fantastic off season. And I just wasn't happy coming away with loved Sauce, but wasn't happy coming away with that a receiver at 10. Really wasn't happy with that. But to not only get JJ, who I think had a really underrated year. I know that we're talking so positively, but really and truly, if you look at plays, right, not just production, if you look at plays at Florida State, the guy is a gamer. And that's what I love about all picks. I don't just want to hear about your stats. I want to see when it's time to go, you are always around the football. You are always impacting plays. You've got loads of energy, plenty of juice. And I feel like we've got that from all 3 picks. I think the biggest surprise is somehow managing to keep 38. That, I think, is huge. To still have a pick tonight, I just elated. I think that defensive line is hugely improved. on the basis of JJ coming in, and I also think it makes people like Lawson. You have to come back. You have to come back and ball out. And I also think it's going to have a positive impact on our interior line. I'm a massive Quinnen Williams fan. I think he has got all the ingredients of being a top defensive tackle in this league. And I think one of the real challenges for him is we didn't have an edge to take off that pressure. It's too easy to nullify our tackles. So I think this is going to make a huge difference to our defensive line. And we've got a fantastic secondary. I think we'll probably do business in linebacker and safety throughout the draft. But I think when you can say, all right, between the likes of Gardner and Reed and the rest of our depth, listen, I'm just going to need you to lock up this man because we're pinning our ears back and we're getting the quarterback. If we can do that, 20% of our games, it just changes everything we can do. We take the pressure off Zach, we'll get into our rhythm so much more, and it means that we are a fierce New York defense. New York Jets defense coming 32 in the league is just not acceptable. It is not acceptable, especially under a coach like Robert Saleh. So I love the pick. I love the fact that we've still got the rest of the draft and we've done fantastic work with those 3 picks. Like you cannot fault it. It is happy days in New York. Trust me.
Absolutely. I mean, you're looking at this is like the Nick Bosa addition to that line in San Francisco. Not saying that he's as good as Nick Bosa, but in terms of like that the piece that really kind of is going to elevate everyone else because you've got other pieces there who are good, and just adding that one more, just like the math starts to work in your favor. You add Sauce on the back as well with DJ Reed coming in, who's I think DJ is a great addition, and you're talking about those 2 there, and Whitehead as safety, and you bring in like it's starting to look really really good, and we don't need it to be actually the world beaters, but we just need it to be better than 32. You can't have Zach and the offense standing there like they did in Philly. I'll always remember that game against Philly where the first half was fantastic from the offense, and then they were left to go ice cold in the second half, sitting on the sideline as the defense could not get off the field. This is not going to be an issue anymore. Like I said, it's still going to be a work in process. I'm sure there's going to be some holes that as we get into the season we know they're going to be needed to cover, but this is going to be a much better situation than we were last year. And like, I just that was the emotion. Like, so the 3 emotions I had. Like, okay, I like the player, but I still felt bad when the JJ pick happened, and that was the moment where I jumped out my seat at 4 a.m. and I was like, yes, let's fucking go. Like, I was just absolutely hyped at that point because that was the feeling because. I think just to have everything capped all together, and it was just a great thing. And like you said, we still got 38, and I think that's just we're blessed because the fact that we had to wait till 26 meant that the jump from 35 wasn't as large, and we didn't have to give up 38. We gave up 60, we gave up 69, and we gave up 163, but we got 101 back as well. So it's like great value. And we got JJ, and like we still got another pick, in the late 3rd round. That's 101. We gave up the early 3rd. It's just absolutely happy days, like you said, Craig. And it's like, yeah, like it looks like it's just the last year's draft, pinning it back with what we did last night. And if we just continue to do a few more picks, this is looking really, really special in terms of what we could do in terms of really changing this franchise and getting out of the doldrums, finally getting to the playoffs, stop being the whipping boys, stop being the laughing stock. And I think this is where it starts to change because across the board, everyone's saying that the Jets were one of the winners last night. Just you look at it and just like those players and the value they got were fantastic. So it is one of those things where you're like, amazing. So we don't want to go too long on this one, but we will quickly just turn our attention to what is available at 38, right? So, we know. So Matt, have you got some of the players available, like some of the best available players who it could be available for us at 38 or in that range?
Yeah, man. I think there's a nice couple of positions that are valuable. I think that the point that stands out to me still on this Jets roster is linebacker, and you've got Chad Muma there, you got Nakobe Dean who's still there. So I think linebacker may well be in play at 38. I'm struggling with O-line at 38 a bit, but perhaps they like someone like Bernard Raymond, and I'm just going to say it now for everyone to hear. I don't want Bernard Raymond, but I can see why Joe Douglas might take him, but not for me. And then the other 2 positions are kind of like if they wanted to double dip, there's wide receivers on the board, and going back to Craig's point of getting a big body guy, you've got Christian Watson and George Pickens there. Those would fill out that big body ask that the Jets are looking for. And then I guess you got edge as well. You got someone like Ebiketie, or you could potentially take an Ojabo and stash him, knowing that you've got Jermaine Johnson in front of you. You can bring Ojabo back from his injury at his own kind of pace. And then the last one, which I think has been my favourite for the 30s all along, is safety. And I was gutted when Dax Hill and Sign went off at 31 and 32 last night. But you still got Petrie, you still got Brisker. I think I'd probably take Brisker out of the two of them because he's kind of got a bit more experience playing in that deep role, whereas Petrie's more of a nickel type, so kind of in that slot position a lot more. Right, so those are some names. I think if you ask me, give me Nakobe Dean. I think Nakobe Dean and Brisker.
I mean, yeah, obviously Nakobe Dean. The thing is, we're 6 picks. We're picking 6 picks in to the second round. I've run a few mock drafts. He's not going. He's not making it in any of the drafts, which obviously makes sense. Like that, he's going to be a guy that people are going to trade up for potentially, or the guys who are there in front of us are going to probably take. So, we will probably be lucky to have Dean there, but we were incredibly lucky to have JJ 26 after 11 failed attempts, or 10 failed attempts to get on the board. So yeah, like I never say never, right? So I think it's just one of the things where Joe Douglas's face when asked by Connor Hughes, said, you got great value at 34 with Elijah Moore last year. You're very happy to get him. You couldn't believe he was there. Do you think there's similar kind of type of talent on the board still there? And you couldn't, he just had this massive smirk on his face, and he was like, yeah, there is. And he's like, so they are very excited about what's available for them, and we'll see what it brings. So. Yeah, I think we're going to head off. Like I said, we're not going to make it too long so people can digest this before we get to round 2. Craig, is there anything you want to say to any of the listeners before as we go into the next 2 days? We'll be recording, after the draft, and looking back on the rest of the draft. So anything you want to say for the next 2 days?
I just think this is a great position to be in. I'd like to see us, if the people aren't on the board that we want, I'd like to see us trade back. I do think there's value in this draft. I really do. And I think that there's no big pieces that I'm desperate to fill. I go and get the most athletic guy you can, in my opinion. I do want a big body receiver. I would have been mad if we got a super athletic linebacker. I know you're quite big on Muma. So yeah, I just think, particularly after the first round, beforehand I thought we were laughing. Now, we can sit back, get the cigars out, get the whiskey on, and just see how it goes, man. Enjoy it, and let's get to training camp.
Absolutely. Matt, any things for the listeners to listen to before we get to round
just
day 2
enjoy
and
it,
3?
man. Just enjoy it. This will hopefully be the last time for a long time the Jets are picking near the top of each round. So enjoy not having to stay up too late. You can get a bit of sleep in. I'm going to go to sleep after 38 because that wait from 38 to 101 is going to be long. So.
Watch when they trade down and they trade back into the 60s, and you're going to have to stay up another an hour. We'll see.
So we'll see. But just enjoy it because next year they're going to be picking in the 40s and the 50s, and it's going to be good. So just enjoy it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Positivity reigns. But yeah, honestly, guys, what a night. I've had very limited sleep, and I'm flagging, but I'm going to get this out to you guys. I'm very excited. I'm just running on pure euphoria at this point, and I'm so excited for what comes next. I'll be attending. If you guys are listening, you're going to the party tonight at Belushi's. I'll be attending that. So if you want to come say hi, obviously we will be very excited to speak about what happened last night and what's going forward. But yeah, we will be recording. We'll look for a recording slot. Probably it's going to be Monday. We're looking at just so we can get as many of us. David really wanted to be on today. He really couldn't. He was trying to find every little way to get out of a work situation that was really not movable, but he was trying to move heaven and earth to get on this because he was so excited about what happened last night as well. And we'll hear his lowdown of night 1, night 2 and night 3 on Monday as well. So we will catch you early next week. Enjoy the rest of the draft, and we'll catch you in a few days.